Thanks for joining us. Todd Connor is here as well from the road. Todd Connor, good to see your face always, brother. Todd and I are road warriors this fall. He was in Alaska last week. In DC,
Yep.
I'm heading to Colorado today. We have a trip coming up to Georgia and many other states in October. So
Yep. It's all happening.
it's all happening for a great cause. If as you're coming in, if you're able to change your name and add your state, that's great. If not, that's okay too. I'm technology challenged, so there's no judgment here if you don't know how to change that on your name. But greetings, everyone.
Nick Coe, congratulations on the victory there.
Thanks so much, Todd. Yeah, it was pretty exciting stuff. Now the hard work begins of educating the whole community about it.
Yeah,
Yes.
phenomenal. What was the final vote split? And
It
tell
was,
everyone what happened.
yeah, well, hey everybody, my name's Nick Coe. I'm based in Charlottesville, Virginia. Recently we had the city council, which is the only level that the legislation allows for ranked choice voting to be implemented across the state. In the city of Charlottesville, we're the second locality in the entire state to have voted to bring in ranked choice voting for our city council races. And the vote ended up being 4-1 with one person not against ranked choice voting, but just against my understanding was like not fully understanding like the single transferable vote and how that would work for a multi-seat race. And he just thought the incentives were not exactly what people were arguing for. But it ended up being 4-1 vote, and so it passed. So for the next 2025 election, Charlottesville will be a city council ranked choice voting race in the primary.
Awesome.
Awesome work. Yeah, Nick, thanks so much for your tireless leadership there. And Doug Earl, I know, right, another one of our leaders was involved. Our friends and partners at Upvote Virginia, which I know Mike Cantwell, you've been instrumental in bringing ranked choice voting to Virginia. So thank you. That's a big win. That's a big win for the movement. All right. Well, we have a quorum. If you're a poli-sci grad and you don't know how to do math, I think we have a quorum. We're up to about 500 leaders for Veterans for All Voters. So we're right around the 500 mark. 48 states. We're still looking for our first leader in West Virginia and North Dakota. I didn't realize how hard it would be to get a veteran to sign up in West Virginia, but bonus points. I will literally send you a care package thanking you if you're the one who gets us the first leader in North Dakota or West Virginia. So also I see Jess McIntosh here, our featured speaker, and what we're going to share today. So Jess is an expert in communications and media. She's been featured on many different television channels and shows. And she is a part of, we often talk about an ecosystem of effort, where Veterans for All Voters is part of an ecosystem of effort. One of the ecosystem partners of ours is called the DCC, the Democracy Communications Collaborative. It's, I don't even know how many organizations now, 60 probably or 70 organizations who are all very concerned about American democracy, very concerned about getting the message out that our elections are safe and secure. And just helps lead, there's an election comms hub. And then within that elections comms hub, there's a few veterans organizations that got together in DC in July, late in July. And we were fortunate to be trained by Jess on just kind of developing your pitch, developing your communication skills, if and when we have the opportunity to be on TV, maybe, or be interviewed, maybe, or just giving a presentation, or just talking to family and friends, which I did over the weekend in rural Southeast Missouri, where my uncle by marriage is the pastor of Cape County Cowboy Church. Hadn't seen each other in a while. And of course, he asked Eric, what are you up to now for work? And I said to the family that was listening, I said, I'm working with almost 500 incredible veteran leaders to make sure we will never have another lesser of two evils elections ever again in our lifetime, because I want more and better choices for my kids. And that's where we left it. I didn't dive into ranked choice voting or open primaries, but they were all, at least with that statement, they were all very appreciative and wished me luck. So I've already said too much. I'm going to hand over the microphone, Jess, to you for the next, say, 25 minutes ish, and then maybe some Q&A afterwards, and then we'll go from there. We'll do some updates on the states that are hot around the country. So Jess, thank you very, very much for being here.
That sounds great. And thank you so much. And that was like an absolutely perfect setup, because I think when we talk about media training, people get real narrow. You think that you're talking about preparation for one specific television interview. And in fact, media training should help you feel confident in literally any setting where you are talking. That includes friends and family. I don't advise using some of the 201 techniques for difficult conversations with your mom, but if you do, you might enjoy the results. So I have been doing this for 20 years, and I've worked at every level of American politics, from US president to school board. And now I find myself in a bunch of spaces where I'm talking to people like you who are, not poli-sci majors. You're people who want to help save our small d democracy. And frankly, yours are the voices that we need in order to do it. We recently conducted, I hadn't even told Eric about this, we recently conducted a bunch of polling and found out that veterans in your community, that phrase, veterans in your community, are literally the most trusted messenger. That's it, number one. More than firefighters, more than pastors, more than anything else that you might think. And we don't have a lot of things in that trusted category anymore. But absolute number one is veterans in your community. So the idea that you all are speaking as loudly and widely as you possibly can is honestly one of the most important things that can happen for our democracy. So thank you for being here and doing what you do. I'm going to go through a little bit of how to develop what you want to say, and then how to keep to saying that regardless of your interview setting. If you want to drop questions into the chat, I'm happy to go back as soon as I'm done. Usually this is about an hour, so I'm going to talk fast. So if you want to do a little deeper dive, we can absolutely do that afterwards. These slides will be given to you, so you do not feel like you need to take notes or anything like that. All right, I'm going to share screen. All right, so very first thing is, what is your story? And I want you all to think a little bit about this. There are three components that you need to have in order to effectively land your message. One is your personal experience, and this is really tough for a lot of people. They want to talk about the issue, but they don't necessarily want to bring themselves into it. I think there's sort of an innate humility that comes with being part of the military, being a veteran. Y'all don't really like to brag on yourselves. That's fine. But talk about why you personally are there. You're there for something in your life. It either happened to you, or it happened to a buddy, or it happened to a family member, brought you here. Say that. Creating that emotional resonance with people, that's what gets them to listen. Way more than facts and figures. I'm a super nerd. I would love it if data did it, but it doesn't. Emotions do it. So talking about who you are and why you're there. What do you want to communicate? This is your issue piece. If you want to leave the people in the room with one single sentence, what is it? And then third, and this is the one that people forget, is why now? Because we're living in a time of lots of intersecting crises. So why should we care about the important thing that you have brought right now? So when you put those three things together, you have your message. You want to have a 3-minute version, and you want to have a 30-second version. So I'm going to focus on the 30-second version right now, which I think is actually a little bit harder than the 3-minute version. And I'm only going to give y'all 2 minutes, but I want everybody to write down, doesn't have to be complete sentences, bullet point your answers to those 3 questions. And then if we have time at the end, maybe I'll volunteer a couple people to share them. But I'm going to put 2 minutes on the clock right now. Think about, what's your personal experience? What do you want to say? And why now? I'm going to sit here. Got about 30 more seconds on the clock. All right, as we're wrapping up, this is going to be homework. This is something that you're going to think about tonight after we go through the rest of the conversation. But think about the number of times that you've been in a room where somebody has said, "Hey, Jack, why don't you introduce yourself and say a little bit about what you're working on?" And that is usually a moment for your heart to leap into your chest because you have not prepared any remarks. Now you'll have it. You will always know. You can answer that at cocktail parties. You can answer it at meetings. You can answer it at Thanksgiving. You will always have an answer to what work are you doing? Why are you here? Why do you care? Do your 30-second version first, and then think about what kind of anecdotes you can tell. You can get a little more expansive with the 3-minute version and practice on each other. So now that we have the idea of what we're going to say, let's get into a little bit of the tips and tricks of how we're going to do that when we're in settings that are not as, open-ended as, "Hey, Jack, why don't you tell us what you do?" Like an interview. So the first thing you want to ask about an interview is, what is your goal? If you don't have a clear-cut goal for doing press, if I leave you with anything, it's this: don't do it. If you can't say, "I'm taking this interview because I need to reach the people this host talks to," or because I want a really great clip so I can send to donors, it can be all, you can be good reasons and bad, but you have to know why you're doing it. And if the answer is because they asked me to, maybe work it out with somebody else, talk a little bit more, figure out whether this is really something you want to do, because you're in charge here. That is honestly the entire point of this. You are in control of the conversation. It is all about your confidence level. You have to know why you're there. Think about the medium. Television is going to give you 4 minutes tops. You'll get your 30-second version out, and that's probably it. God forbid you start with a joke because you might not get a chance to come back and deliver your message. So you're thinking about being really brief. Radio, podcasts, you might have a little more time to get expansive. You might be able to tangent. You might be able to tell a couple of stories. That's fine. In print, it's difficult because you're having what feels like a normal conversation, but the only thing that's going to come out are a couple of quotes. So you have to keep that in mind as you're having that talk. You don't want to wind up discussing something that is so different than the message that you came to deliver that's not what shows up in the quotes. Social media, you're in charge of, a lot easier. Testimony too, it's really, you have the platform to say what you want to say. So think about the medium and think about your audience. Lawmakers speak a different vocabulary than the general population does. Veterans, you guys love your acronyms. We need to make sure that the message is going to hit with the audience you want to reach. So sometimes you want to reach fellow veterans. In that case, go ahead and use that language. It will actually help. But if what you want to reach is general voters, make sure that you're speaking in such a way that they don't have to be a member of the club that you are a member of in order to understand what you're saying. Speak to their level. So an interview is about confidence. You want to go in as an equal and enthusiastic participant. That is because you know why you're there. It's not like they've invited you and you've said yes. You have come to a mutual agreement that you're going to do this. Control is about taking an active role in the interview and creating opportunities to share your message. It is not about answering questions. A lot of people feel like that's what an interview is. Reporter asks a question, you answer it. In fact, you're there to communicate your 30-second, your 3-minute, you're there to communicate your message to their audience. So if they're not asking the questions that gets you to do that, you have to take charge. You have to say, "Look, this is what I really think that your audience needs to know." And we'll talk a little more about how to do that. But the bottom line is you're in control. Credibility also matters so much. This is where that emotional resonance comes in. If you tell somebody that you care about an issue because it personally affected you or someone you love, instant credibility. Already, I care. I want to know more about the issue. I want to know more about your friend. I want to know. Body language is also a big credibility conveyor. I am a person who, like, I fold into whatever chair I'm in. I will cross my arms, I will cross my legs twice, like I will sit sideways. That's not very credible. So I have to think about what am I doing with my person to convey credibility. If you cross your arms, it looks like you don't want to be there. You instantly look a little shifty. If you're the kind of person who thinks by looking up, you look a little bit shifty. So credibility needs to be about a present, confident, in control physicality. If you get those three things together, you're going to feel really good as the interview goes on. Pivoting is really the key to everything. This is taking whatever you're given and bringing it back to what you actually wanted to say. And this is really good for Thanksgiving dinner too, because you know how unhelpful it is to like go down the rabbit hole of what somebody wants to say when they're wrong about something. You know, if you get into that debate about whether or not they're right, you're not doing what you came to do. You're not talking about the issue that matters to you. So pivoting allows you to take that discussion from something unfriendly. You know, let's say you want to talk about veterans issues and somebody keeps trying to bring it back to politics. Sure, but then how do you feel about the presidential race? You don't want to be there. We're not talking about that right now. So what you're going to do is say something like, look, I'm not really thinking about the politics of this. The most important thing is, or man, the presidential race is really not my focus, but let me tell you. You know what? I think an even more important question than the one you're asking is this. Like, you can very explicitly say, I don't want to talk about the thing that you're trying to get me to talk about. I want to talk about this because it matters. So you'll practice, you'll figure out what language works for you to do that. But when you master this, you have mastered public speaking, period. You're good, you're done. So work together. We have a term of industry, which is terrible. We call it murder boarding, where somebody asks you the meanest questions they can think of, and then you try to like steer it back to your message. Doesn't have to be mean, but sit with a friend and have them ask you a few questions. Like, they can be on or off topic because it's your job to bring it back to what you actually wanted to say. You can even do it like driving in the, like playing the game with yourself works too. Ask what you want to get for lunch and see how long it takes you to get back to the topic you want to say. When you've mastered this, you'll feel fantastic. The traps to avoid. Resisting becoming so fixated by the questions that you lose your own points. I am guilty of this if the reporter is really good. Because remember, it's not about answering the questions that are asked. It's about delivering the message that you came to deliver. So if you get caught up in the conversation, you're probably not thinking about delivering the message that you came to deliver. So don't become a passive respondent. Make sure that you're in there and owning it. The second one is a big one, especially for women, because man, are we socialized to never let anything be awkward ever. Don't keep talking to fill the silence. If you have said what you want to say, end on a period. You're done speaking. Reporters also know that this is a tactic they can use to make you say more than you actually want to say. So you'll end on a period, you know, they'll ask you about Donald Trump's latest whatever. You'll masterfully say, I'm not really into the politics of this. I'm here because of important issue X. And then they'll just let the silence sit there for a minute, hoping that you'll say, but Donald Trump X, Y, and Z. You're not going to do that. We're just going to sit in silence. Eventually, they'll ask you another question. If you're on the phone, you can ask if you lost them. But the bottom line is, you are no one can make you say anything that you don't want to say. So as long as you are in control of that, that you're good. The third one is a little, doesn't come up all that often, but I have seen people get burned by it, so I include it. If somebody asks a question in a negative way, are you upset by government inaction on X, let's say? And you're not there to push that frame, don't repeat it as you answer. Then you're putting the attack in your own voice. So if you say, are you upset by government inaction on X? And I say, it's not really about government inaction. I think what's really happening is it's getting held up at X, Y, and Z. Well, if they quote me on that, now I have suggested that government inaction might be a problem. Might not be the biggest one that I'm addressing, but I have brought up the subject of government inaction, and I didn't mean to do that. So you can just say no. You can say, I don't think that's a thing. You can move it along in a lot of different ways that doesn't allow them to quote you on it. Basic anatomy of an answer is remembering that you are the expert. They need you, like you are the expert. Like they are talking to you because you have something to share. You say what you came to say. You don't do any, you don't come to answer their questions. You don't say the things you don't want to say. You came what you say to say. You say what you came to say. If you're on the air, use the host's name. Like, be complimentary. This is why you hear somebody say, thanks for having me, Chris. It's great to join you. It's because the audience is there for the host. They tune in every day because they have this parasocial relationship with the host. They like them. That's why they watch the show. So if you can create a rapport with that host, then the audience knows that you guys are in the same club. End on a period. We're not going to say more than we want to. And fully, it is okay not to know an answer. Like, you're not running for office. It's not okay when somebody running for president, whiffs on answers or says they don't know, they don't have a plan for whatever. But you're there to talk about your own experience. That is why you would be giving testimony or doing a television interview or talking to a print reporter. So if they ask a question that you don't know the answer to, just say, I don't know the answer to that. Let me circle back with you. Or there's probably a staffer in the room. You can say, I don't know that, but I bet Eric does, and I'm going to have him follow up. It is absolutely fine. It is not a sign of weakness. It is fully appropriate to do that. Where people get in trouble is when they get that school thing where you freeze up when you don't know the answer and then they try to guess. Don't do that. Own what you're there to say. Answering questions you don't know the answer to is obviously not what you came to say, so it's not something you're going to be doing. On and off the record. These seem pretty simple, but I want to go through them just because, again, I've seen some people get burned. You are on the record the entire time you are talking to a reporter, from the moment they say hello until the moment they walk away. If you pick up the phone and somebody says, hi, this is Jess from the Wall Street Journal, and you say, hi, Jess, that's on the record. If I say, I would love to get your comment on this, Arlington Cemetery debacle, and you say, I don't really want to comment on that, that's also on the record. The only way to go off the record is to say to a journalist, can we go off the record? And the journalist says yes. Both things have to happen. So you can't, in the middle of a sentence, say, yeah, well, but off the record, I think what happened was this. Journalist hasn't agreed. That's not off the record. You can't send an email with the subject line off the record and then a paragraph that you wanted to communicate. Journalist hasn't agreed. It's not off the record. So I like to pretend that off the record just doesn't exist. There are very, very few reasons to say something to a reporter that you wouldn't want to see in print. You're probably not going to run into any of them. So just assume, start to finish, you're on the record. That if someone walks up to you at an event and says, hey, I'm a reporter with the Washington Post, you're on the record from the second that you say hi back. Once you've done your interview, you're going to watch it back. And I know this is really hard to watch the tape back. It's very upsetting. Like, no one wants to do it. But if you picture athletes, there's no chance that an athlete doesn't watch the play, especially if they messed up, right? They want to know where they put their foot wrong this time so they don't do it next time. Like, just try to disassociate and treat it like sports, but you got to watch it back. You're going to ask whether you made a connection to your organization. Would your neighbor understand the point you're making? Did you use abbreviations or shorthand? Did you share a personal story? It also helps that credibility piece where you see how you start to come across. Sometimes people are surprised by the way that they come across when they watch themselves back on tape. You might have a really serious resting face that you should know, you look a little angry when you're not speaking, and maybe you want to solve for that. I have a real problem with talking with one half of my face, which now that I have said, you will probably notice. But after I started going on TV regularly, I would watch the tape back, and it gets worse when I feel like I'm like really landing a point. Like when I'm really nailing it, like it looks like I'm smirking, which is the exact opposite, of course, of what I want to convey. Totally undermines my credibility. It's just how my face works. But since I know about it, I can fix it. I can actually be cognizant of what my mouth is doing and not accidentally smirk when I'm, talking about reproductive freedom or something that is absolutely inappropriate to be smirking about. So it does help you. It does help you learn a little bit more than you would probably like to know about your own appearance. Speaking of appearance, we need to go through these quick rules about showing up on camera. Rest, hydrate, groom. If you do those three things, you're set. Don't go tired. Hydration is just really important. And you sort of want to look like the best version of you. I say like pretend you're going to brunch to meet a new partner's parents for the first time. Like you don't want to dress like somebody else. You just want to dress like the best version of yourself. Yes, say yes to the makeup. This is so hard, especially for veteran and military communities, because I mean, I'm not a makeup person. You look nuts when you go on TV without the TV makeup because you're sitting next to a bunch of other people who have it. It's also a very unnatural setting. You're in high definition. You've got serious lights on you. None of this is normal. So the makeup doesn't look like makeup. It looks like a normal human face. If you feel like you need to, when you're in the green room, tell them to do as little as possible, and they will know what to do with that. But do let the professionals do their work. They will make you look better. You will be happy that you did. Make sure you get there early. You want to be able to take a breath. You know how bad it is when you like run into an office building and straight into a meeting, how flustered you feel. Don't do that for television. Give yourself the time. Turn your cell phone all the way off. If it's on silent and it's vibrating in your pocket, that will be distracting. You want to establish eye contact. Like we want to really talk to the host. If you're in one of those terrible little satellite boxes, you have to establish eye contact with that little camera that's right in front of you. Like you have to talk to it. You have to like create a relationship with that little camera. It's awkward, but it's eye contact. And that's what people need in order to feel like you are being credible and authentic. Active listening face. We're going to smile. We're going to nod. We're going to show expression all the time. We're going to watch that tape back so we know that if our active listening face looks really serious, that we're either leaning into that because we want to or fixing it because we don't. We're going to be engaged the whole time. Even if you're not speaking, we're not going to lean back. We're not going to take notes. We're going to watch. Consider yourself always mic'd and always on camera. That is even after the segment ends. If you have a camera attached to you, it is picking up sound. It can hear you. If you are sitting in a studio, the cameras are on. Even if they are not broadcasting, they are capturing you. We have seen a lot of politicians get burned by that. So I'm sure that you all know about the hot mic moments, and none of us need to have them. Remain in place until the very end. This shouldn't be, but like sometimes they pan back to you after they're done with your segment. So the producer will come in your ear and say, "You're clear." And at that point, you can leave. Or a sound tech will come in and say, "Let me unhook you from all of your mics." At that point, you can leave. Until then, you're sitting in your chair, you've got your active listening face on, and you're ready. So the final thing is practicing, and it is really, really important. You're going to do your 30 seconds. You're going to do your 3 minutes. You're going to know what you want to say. And once you've got that done, and that can be quietly done with a paper, it can be in a notes app, whatever, you're going to practice alone in the mirror. This is how you're going to figure out the smirking thing before you ever get on camera. You will, it's the mirror one I think is the toughest because there's no accountability, like no one will know whether you do it or not. But you will feel better if you do. And once you've done that a few times, practice in front of your friends, your spouse, your pets, have an audience, have the friendliest audience you can possibly imagine. And also lean on each other. Like you all are in the same exact boat. This entire call should be people who can help each other out. If you're up against, an interview that you're worried about. And to that end, I'll stop sharing and just say that like my inbox is extremely open. So if anybody has something coming up that they want to chat through, I'm more than happy to be there. That was a lot of information in 25 minutes.
That was fantastic, Jess. It's so practical and so helpful. So we really appreciate it. And we will, as Jess mentioned, we will share out not only this recording, but the slides as well. Did you, Jess, we can't open it up for Q&A, but did you want to try to put someone on the spot, or is there a brave volunteer who would like to?
I would love to start with that.
Practice, any brave volunteers who are willing to practice their 30-second pitch.
Mike, I see a hand.
All right, Mike, take yourself, off mute, and then
Whenever you're ready.
Will you act like a
30-second.
reporter? Will you be asking me the questions?
No, I think let's go with the hey Mike, thanks for being here. Why don't you let the group know what it is you're working on version of things. So
Okay.
take it away whenever you feel ready.
Running for office was one of the most important, exciting thing that I've ever done. I really want to encourage all veterans to consider running for office, especially at the local and state level. When I took a candidate training a few years ago, the instructor said, no candidate ever said, I wish I would have started my campaign later. So now is the time for you to think about running for office. Thank you.
I love it. That was probably the best urgency piece that I've heard in a 30-second trying to get somebody to run for office. It was great. And you started by doing it like you brought your personal experience right in. So already you're credible. You've done it yourself. I care. So thank you. Thank you for modeling that for everybody. That was fantastic.
That was awesome. Claudia from New Mexico. We'd love to hear from you, Claudia.
Okay. I'm Claudia Reisner, and I'm a Navy veteran with 29 years on active duty. I served under 5 commanders-in-chief, both parties. Partisanship was considered unprofessional. I think that is why almost 50% of veterans in the US are registered as independent voters. Partisanship is divisive, and it's ruining our democracy by driving people, especially young people, away from participating in our political process. This cannot continue. We need open elections in New Mexico to enfranchise everyone, and we need to do it now.
That was fantastic.
Bravo.
I have no notes and I learned something. I didn't know 50% of veterans were registered as independents. That's fascinating. Then you're talking that now the case for open elections is about not disenfranchising the people who have put the most on the line for our democracy. Like that is a hell of an urgency point right there. Thank you. Feels like you guys kind of have this down, so there's no reason not to be practicing tonight, right?
Yeah, no, that was fantastic, Claudia, and really well said. So are there, for Jess, we can take the next 5 minutes or so, any follow-up questions from her presentation? I saw one, Jess, in there from Ray, just about whether you recommend with the host, first name versus keeping it more formal.
I would first name it.
Yeah.
If the host is a former congresswoman or something, then I might use the honorific, but also watch the show a little bit. Like some people, if you're on Al Sharpton's show, you might call him Al, you might call him Rev. Like if, you might call him Reverend, like watch it a little bit and see what works for you. But colloquial is better for sure. Yes, more like JFK, less like Nixon. This was about the makeup. This was
about the makeup. It was not a partisan comment. For those who don't know, the famous debate. Jess,
if you heard it on the radio, you thought Nixon won. If you watched it on television, you thought JFK won. And it was the first televised debate, so more people did that. And he's widely thought of as winning that in a landslide. Really, he just said yes to the powder. Nick.
So always the powder. Nick, Nick Coe.
Hey, thanks so much for running this, Jess. Quick question. When it comes to having that pithy statement that people will take away, what has been your best process for doing that? Because, it's good to have like the 30-second speech, but nobody can recreate the 30-second speech. Normally it's that like pithy phrase that they take away and say again. What's been, a successful approach that you've seen for creating those?
Don't try to be funny. Humor is tough. Like if you're doing a long form podcast and you are a naturally funny person, don't stop. But you're talking about a soundbite, and you want a soundbite to sort of grab you. Going for humor usually adds a layer of distance. So think about it beforehand. You want it to be able to fit in a single relatively short sentence, and you want to use it a couple of times during a print interview. Saying something more than once lets people know that that's the thing that matters to you. even more than, I mean, I wouldn't repeat the exact same sentence twice in a TV interview, but making the same point 2 or 3 times is totally fine. So I wouldn't, I would think more about message than soundbite. But once you feel really confident on message, watch your audience. And if there's a moment where they're like, wow, I didn't, they're always reacting to something, then maybe we can tinker with those words again and like I bet we could get the like 50% of veterans are registered independents and we shouldn't be disenfranchising the people who have put the most lives on the line. Like we could come up with a soundbite for that. Like, and then, if you say it a couple of times, they will probably put it within the quotation marks in the piece.
Thank you.
Brad, I see a hand.
Yes. So thank you, by the way, this was terrific. I have had some success with some different terminology, and I'm curious, and maybe this is to the wider group too. Rather than say open primaries, I have found it more effective to use the term nonpartisan primaries. It's easier to explain. And rather than say ranked choice voting, I've used the term majority choice voting. And I'm do this in presentations around Virginia. That seems to work better. But I worry that I'm using language that's different than other people are using.
You're using language that's better. Like always speak in plain English. You're absolutely right. Like we should be saying nonpartisan primaries instead of open primaries because people don't know what that means. I made the mistake of saying down ballot voting the other day to a group of people who were like, what is that? We anticipate a level of education in our general audience that is simply not there. Like and it's not just, I mean, we know we don't teach civics anymore. Like, the average person doesn't know what an open primary is. So explaining that in terms that they will is always, always, always a win. If you see organizations that you care about putting out stuff that you're like, hey, I don't think my mom would get that, go ahead and let them know. Like this is something that we all suffer from. Everybody in the policy space, everybody in the political space, we have tons and tons of terms of industry that we don't even realize are terms of industry anymore. Like I wouldn't have thought of down ballot voting as a particularly like erudite thing. It was just not a word that the influencer cohort I was talking to had ever heard. Once I explained it, they thought it was really cool. So now I'm trying to say,
should we try to coalesce around language that may be a little different than open primaries and ranked choice voting?
So the short answer is yes. I mean, we do need to get our language all on the same page. Where it gets a little complicated is there are state-based nuances where saying, so nonpartisan primary, in South Dakota, there was a campaign for open nonpartisan primaries, a ballot initiative that failed because their nonpartisan meant no party labels. We have a fundamental issue too, where most people don't even know what the primary election is. So Brad, I've experimented with unified primaries, single ballot, one ballot for all is a bumper sticker slogan that I'm trying to popularize, one ballot for all. It's hard because reform nerds, if you got 10 of us in a room, we wouldn't agree on one word.
But consider your audience too. Like,
yes.
If you're talking to lawmakers, go ahead and say open primaries, say ranked choice voting. They know exactly what you're talking about. If you're lucky enough to be on Good Morning America, well, let's put our heads together and figure out what words you're going to use for the general population. But this is such an important question. I'm so glad that you brought that up.
It is. And Brad, I also really like majority choice or majority winner voting methods. I've started to say we support any and all majority winner voting methods. And that covers, there's approval voting, there's star voting, there's ranked choice voting, there's different types of ranked choice voting, but majority winner is the value that we're trying to get to.
Yeah, thank you.
Great questions though. So Jess, this has been fantastic. And any final questions for Jess? And Jess, you're welcome to hang out with us for the rest of the all hands call, but I know you're doing lots of presentations all over and very busy, so it's totally up to you.
No, but thank you guys so much for doing it. Do we have any others? Is there anything
Any final questions? All right.
My inbox really is open. So if something comes up or you get invited to do something that you would like to do but are a little less than confident, please don't hesitate to reach out. And thank you all for doing everything that you're doing. I wasn't kidding about you saving democracy. So we appreciate it.
No, thank you,
Thank you,
Jess. Thank
Eric.
you so much. One team, one fight, as they say in the Army. So we'll do a quick kind of around the US, and I'm going to share my screen, which is risky because I'm notorious for keeping way too many tabs open. So with that apology, can everyone see my screen okay? Yeah, great. Thank you. This is the map, and the place to find this, Jameson, if you don't mind dropping in the chat, our volunteer resources. You can find all of our public domain resources, veteransforallvoters.org/resources. Jameson will drop it in the chat. And then this is slide number 20 in our overview deck. Admittedly, we probably have too many slides in our overview deck. The purpose, though, is think of it more of a resource library, right? You might want to pull 1 or 2 slides for your presentation. Whatever's helpful to you in your state, please copy and paste and use whatever we have that's helpful. So our goal, again, just the mission, right, is Final 4 or Final 5 voting in at least 5 states by 2026. And this is Todd has said this number of times recently. I mean, this year is like the Super Bowl for the reform movement. We are truly on the cusp of a tipping point moment where 7 states plus Washington, D.C. have pro-reform ballot measures. And then we are defending against bad ballot measures in 4 different states, including Utah as a late break-in. Utah is not on this map. The state legislature there is trying to make the citizens initiative petition process nearly impossible to use, or to water it down so that the state legislature can undo whatever the citizens pass. And so Utah is a late breaking negative ballot amendment, but we have 5 paid staff now on the ground in our #1 priority state is Alaska. So defending against the repeal effort. It's the No on 2 campaign in Alaska. If you know anyone in Alaska, I see Brian here on the call, and I'll probably call on as I'm talking about your state, or after I go around the horn, maybe we'll get a quick update from each leader there. But we have Jeff Carson is our paid staff, and then Brian's an incredible leader there as well in Alaska. Todd was up there last week. It's going to be a dogfight, for lack of a better phrase. It's going to be a battle to the end. It'll probably end up being very close. And it does take up to 2 weeks to count the ballots in Alaska. That was the case before ranked choice voting. So don't believe the hype when opponents say, it takes 2 weeks to get our results now because of ranked choice voting. That's not true. Alaska's a huge state, and it takes time for them to get all the ballots counted. So that's priority #1. I would say priority #2 is Nevada. Why Nevada? Because we passed it once. We have to pass Final 5 voting again in Nevada. Ballot question 3. Yes on 3. So we have a great Navy veteran, Brandon Moody, leading the charge in Nevada, and the face of the Nevada campaign, Marine Corps veteran Mike Escobar. He's just recorded a new set of advertisements. If you go to the Yes on 3 Nevada campaign website, you'll see the new commercials featuring Mike Escobar, which are really exciting. Then we also have great campaigns. Idaho, I know we have some of the Idaho team on the call for Final 4 voting in Idaho. Montana has a really interesting, it's 2 ballot measures. One is for top 4 open primaries, and the second ballot measure requires a majority winner. And this is intentional, 2 different ballot measures. Why? Because they're strict single subject rule in Montana. So they had to divide it up. And intentionally, after we win, we will go to the state legislature and lobby them to use instant runoff voting, because that would make the most sense. It would save time and money. But it will be up to the state legislature to figure out how to do a top 4 and get a majority winner when Citizens Initiative 126 and 127 are successful in Montana. Colorado, I'm flying to Colorado later today. that's on the ballot. Final four voting. It's yes on 131. We have on staff now, Tony Haas is a 30-year Army veteran, just recently retired. He joined us as part of our national staff, but he's also leading the charge in Colorado for that state campaign, which is going really well. The polling is looking good in Colorado, in spite of both parties coming out in opposition to Final Four voting, which you think would be a compelling argument when both parties oppose something. But in some rooms I've been in, I've been accused of working for the Unigov or the Uniparty, which really is confounding to me when both parties oppose these reforms. Arizona, Ray is on the call and doing great work in Arizona. That's a real interesting battleground state because there's two really bad ballot measures, two or three. One to make enshrine partisan primaries, one to make the citizens petition process harder to use. And then there's a good one called Make Elections Fair. That's the ballot measure we're supporting. And Ray is working in support of Make Elections Fair, which would level the playing field for all candidates. All candidates have the same requirements to get on the ballot. And then it would also be a fully open, unified primary. But it doesn't say that you have to do top 2, 3, 4, or 5. Again, the legislature would have to decide whether to do 2, 3, 4, or 5. If they do 3 or more, the ballot measure would require using instant runoff voting. South Dakota has a ballot measure for open nonpartisan primaries. Amendment H, yes on Amendment H in South Dakota. And I feel like, I should have mentioned in Montana, sorry, I almost forgot to mention our leaders there, David Ocklander and Scott Walgren. We have a West Point grad and a Navy grad leading the charge in Montana, and so far they're getting along okay. Thankfully, the election is before the Army-Navy game, so they should be able to work together well throughout that time. This is a point where I would ask Todd if I'm missing anything, but let's open it up. I'm going to stop sharing screens, and if I mentioned your state and you have an update that you're willing to share with us, please dive in. Maybe we'll start. Yeah, Ray, go ahead, and then Alaska, Idaho, please go ahead.
Thanks, Eric. On your note about being accused of working for one party or the other, an interesting data point from Arizona. There's been a couple lawsuits that were leveled against the Make Elections Fair initiative. We knew that one of them, which was dealing with the single subject requirement, was brought by right-leaning groups aligned with the Republican Party. We knew that was public. We just recently, in the last month, found out that the other lawsuit, which has to do with signature stuff, is actually being led by the Democratic governor's campaign manager. So again, Eric, you can just add this to the list of data points of showing that both parties feel threatened by this, and that these kinds of efforts should not be seen as supporting one versus the other. Other than that, you nailed the current status of it. Thanks.
Thanks for that. Thanks for that update, Ray. Yeah, Brian from Alaska. Thanks, brother, for being here.
Yeah, happy to be here. It was you mentioned Todd came for a visit, so that was really exciting to have him up here and show him around what was going on. We had a little event for a bunch of, we invited a bunch of vets at a brew pub, so that's a good way of getting people to show up. Everybody likes beer for the most part, so that was good. And let's see, we're doing a bunch of op-eds. We're really starting to press out some op-eds now, and in Alaska that is an interesting process because we really only have one big newspaper in Alaska. There's some smaller ones, but it's really kind of only one big paper. So, we can kind of, in a way inundate them. And we have a schedule over the next 2 months to get, a bunch of op-eds in, get that out. And then the only other thing was we've all seen the Majority Rules documentary, which is a large part about Alaska. And we're kind of getting excited about trying to put together an event to show that on a larger scale, maybe at a movie theater here in Alaska, closer to the time of the election, because it's pretty uplifting, I think, when you watch the thing. So we're trying to come up with some of those type of ideas to get more people engaged. But things are going well. Jeff is doing a super job. Thanks for sending him up. It's been great to have him, and he's working hard.
Thank you so much, Brian. And yeah, thanks for being so kind. You know, a good friend to Jeff too, and just an incredible partner with Veterans for All Voters and the campaign. So I'm hopefully be coming up in October for the AFN conference, the Alaska
great.
Federation of
Yeah.
Natives, and it's a big conference. Veterans for All Voters will be a small sponsor of that, the coffee break room. So I was going to go to, one last thing on Alaska. For everyone's knowledge, the Wall Street Journal has had a couple of really negative op-eds about ranked choice voting in Alaska, right? And I guess Kim Strassel, the person, I guess she lives in Alaska now. You know, if any of you individually feel like you want to write something and respond to that, I mean, I'm always happy to look over a draft response. And really the last article focused on the Republicans in Alaska right now are really trying to game the system. A lot of them are dropping out of the congressional race, which means there's a Democrat, unfortunately, who's in federal prison that's on the ballot now in Alaska. And that sounds terrible, but that sounds terrible. And it's politics as usual, right? It's people just trying to game a new system that they don't like. And it's unfortunate, but big picture, long term, the values are on our side, and you know, I hope things end up being successful in Alaska. So we'll go over to Brandon Moody in Nevada.
Hey everyone. Yeah, Nevada is obviously very, very hot. We're on offense, getting Yes on 3, and we are fully supporting the Yes on 3 campaign on our end here, because that is how we're all going to unify to get this done, get this amendment to the Nevada Constitution passed to allow for open primaries and final 5 voting, as Eric mentioned. So passed in 2022, and we're in the final push to get it passed here. We're putting out as many feelers as we can for anyone who's in state or out of state to support us. And we're really focusing on the youth. I'm going down to UNLV right now, University of Nevada, Las Vegas, because there, you know, there's a big wave of youth supporters and also young veterans who are there, who are wanting to get active and loud. You're going to hear their voices. We're going social. So if you guys see us on Instagram, we're at Vets for NV Voters. And also you can just type in Veterans for Nevada Voters in Facebook, and you'll see our page there. We're really trying to bolster that initially. So I really appreciate your support with that. And then coming up next month, we've got MCon. That it's with a 4. Let me put it in. That's going to be the Instagram, and then for Facebook, just search for Veterans for Nevada Voters and really help us. There's a few things on there, but there's going to be more veteran voices and more support of as we get some interviews from other veterans and some interviews that I've shot for other veterans that are speaking their truth about this issue. So we're getting geared for that. And if anybody's in the area next month, we've got MCon, which is military conference, October 24th to 27th, and then on October 26th. Veterans for All Voters will have a local event there in the evening. So if you're in the Las Vegas area, please join us or contact me for that. I'll put my email in here. If you do want to be a part of the group of Veterans for All Voters cohort that will be there. Awesome. And so we're moving as fast as we can. This is the final push, and this would be a big statement for the state and for the rest of the country to get this done, and something real and tangible for us to move forward with.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Brandon. And yeah, so Todd and I will also be at the Military Influencers Conference in Atlanta, Georgia. Jason Smith, I will reach out to you about that. And then the MCon in Las Vegas late in October. I realized my oversight looking at our map, I was so focused on ballot initiatives, I forgot to mention our good friends doing really good and hard work in legislative states, including Claudia in New Mexico, Mark and Brian in Wisconsin, and Seamus Murphy, who is an Army veteran who's leading the charge for Veterans for New York Voters, just finished his MPP at University of Chicago, moved back to his home state. And Seamus, I don't know if you want to give us a quick update on our partnership with Unite New York there.
Yeah, so Friday I'll be heading to Syracuse to conduct some voter registration drive with Unite New York, our partners there. And then Monday, the 23rd, Todd will be in Syracuse. We'll be conducting a happy hour. I'll send that out to the New York folks on the call at a brewery there, the Orange Crate Brewing Co. And just looking to get some more majority rule screenings at universities at Syracuse and Cornell upstate, as well as in October, and then downstate, looking to try to engage with our volunteers more there. And our partners at Final Five Voting are picking up steam going into next year. So they're starting to really come together, and excited to see everything going on down there.
Yeah, awesome, Seamus. So yeah, Unite New York is focused on the whole state, working toward Final Five voting. And there very well might be a new Final Five voting campaign in New York City relaunching early next year. So exciting stuff happening in New York. I know we're getting close to the end of our time. Want to make sure we hit on Idaho. If either of the gentlemen, Stan or Patrick, you have an update on the Idaho ballot measure, how it's going?
Stan, why don't you take this?
All right. Basically, the opponents' yard signs are popping up like poison mushrooms. Fortunately, we've got a fair number of vote yes on Proposition 1 yard signs going up right next door to the poison mushrooms. The opponents are basically concentrating on the ranked choice voting term. We've given them another 3-letter acronym that they can chant endlessly, and that I think is kind of a mistake. They're trying to make it into something that's some sort of an administrative demon. They're publishing long op-eds that run to 3 pages describing how complicated and convoluted it is. And we go against that just by showing them our demonstration of ranked choice voting on your dessert. Or we show them Alaska's ballot and say, you keep track of the NFL draft, you can't keep track of your primary candidate. So we are putting majority rules in pretty heavy rotation. We've got a couple of really active people in smaller communities who are recruiting small venues to show it on multiple occasions. It's going to be shown again in Boise prior to the election at one of the local theaters, where it was kind of sold out when they showed it initially. So we are in our final push and really working hard. We've got regional leaders all around the state who are taking ownership for getting signs distributed, getting majority rules into local venues, and we're also stepping up our program of addressing civic groups, religious groups, anybody who basically will sit still for 20 minutes to listen to us and watch our program. So that's
Awesome.
kind of where we are right now.
Awesome. Thanks for all the good work in Idaho.
I've got one thing to add.
Sure, Patrick. We're at the end of our time, but go ahead and take
just quickly. We've been sued twice by our good friends in the Attorney General's office. Once in the Supreme Court, that got thrown out. Once in the district court, and the judge made a decision, like a 25-page decision, in less than 24 hours. So they were trying to challenge all of our signatures as being fraudulently obtained, and that went nowhere.
Yeah, they've overcome an incredible amount of lawsuits in Idaho. So the status quo defenders will not go down easily, right? But this is the team that gives me so much hope for the future of our country. Citizen soldiers who know that right makes might, and that the right mission at the right time is not only powerful, but it is the antidote we need to heal our country, heal our politics. So you all, thank you so much for being a part of this movement. Please check out the Majority Rules film. There's a link in the chat for that. It's amazing. You can host a screening. We will be doing a virtual screening on October 21st. We'll get more details out on that soon. It'll be the evening of October 21st, a national virtual event to invite friends and families to to watch and learn more. It's an inspiring story. So one team, one fight. We're at the end of our time. Thank you so much for being here. Stay in touch, and I'm always available if you need to talk. Onward.